Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly monumental turning point in global history. We're going to examine exactly how India's nationalist movement dramatically shifted, going from a series of, polite debates in elite circles into a massive, unstoppable grassroots uprising. We're looking at a deeply pivotal 15-year period where ordinary, everyday people finally took center stage to challenge an empire.
Okay, let's quickly lay out our historical roadmap for today. We'll be covering the early triumphs of Satyagraha, reforms and social awakening, the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy, the non-cooperation movement, Swarajists and revolutionary voices, and finally the legendary Dandi Salt March.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Early Triumphs of Satyagraha.
So the foundation of this whole era really kicks off around 1915. Gandhi had just returned to India from South Africa. But here's the interesting part. Instead of jumping straight into national politics, he actually spent a year just traveling to understand the masses. Before leading the whole nation, he tested his methods on the ground. In places like Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Kedah, he championed the rights of poor farmers and mill workers. It was here he proved that his philosophy of Satyagraha, which is truth and nonviolence, could genuinely work against British exploitation.
Looking back 100 years to the 1917 Champaran Satyagraha, we see a situation where European planters were literally forcing farmers to grow indigo under a highly exploitative system. And Gandhi didn't just show up and give a speech, he lived with them. He conducted detailed inquiries and flat-out defied police orders. By starting with these micro-level, deeply personal issues, he built a macro-level political movement that completely resonated with everyday Indians.
Moving right along to Section 2, Reforms and Social Awakening.
Now, while Gandhi was out there mobilizing the grassroots, the British were definitely feeling the pressure. So they introduced the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms in 1919. They created this new system called diarchy. But notice the split here. Crucial areas like law, order, and finance, those were kept strictly in British hands. Meanwhile, subjects like health and education were handed over to Indian representatives. Indians quickly realized this was basically a hollow victory because real power was still firmly concentrated in European hands.
But hey, at the exact same time, there's this absolutely crucial internal shift happening. While the nation was fighting the British, leaders like B.R. Ambedkar and Periyar E.V. Ramasamy were stepping up to challenge upper caste dominance. These non-Brahmin and Dalit movements were fighting for fundamental social justice, really highlighting that true freedom meant dismantling oppressive social hierarchies at home, too.
Just to put things into perspective, consider this staggering statistic. 72%. In parts of southern India, Brahmins made up roughly 3.2% of the population, yet they held 72% of graduate degrees and heavily dominated government jobs. That stark inequality fueled the rightful demands of the non-Brahmin movements and really shaped the political landscape for decades to come.
Which brings us to a much darker chapter. Section 3, the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy.
So, if there were any illusions left about British justice, the 1919 Rowlatt Act completely shattered them. The colonial government essentially gave itself the power to arrest and imprison any Indian without a trial, just entirely bypassing the courts. In response to this deeply draconian law, Gandhi launched a nationwide satyagraha. The entire country practically shut down in protest, shops closed up, and everyday people took to the streets.
And this direct clash leads us to the horrific events on April 13, 1919. At Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar, thousands of unarmed civilians had gathered peacefully to protest the arrest of local leaders. Now, the area had only one narrow exit. General Dyer brought his troops, blocked that single exit, and actually ordered them to fire into the trapped crowd until their ammunition ran out.
The government's official death toll was stated as 379. But to really understand the horrifying scale of the massacre, historical consensus shows that the actual number of lives lost was likely well over 1,000, with so many more severely wounded. The utter brutality of it just shocked the conscience of the entire nation.
As you can imagine, this tragedy united Indians in shared grief and absolute furious anger. The legendary poet Rabindranath Tagore famously renounced his British knighthood in protest. He wrote this incredibly powerful letter to the viceroy, declaring that titles of honor were just a glaring shame in the face of such humiliation.
Let's move to Section 4, the non-cooperation movement.
All that national anger, it had to go somewhere. Combined with the Khilafat movement, which was protesting the treatment of the Ottoman Empire, this new wave united Hindus and Muslims in a massive grassroots response.
Gandhi asked the people to simply stop cooperating. And the tactics were specific and nonviolent. Boycott government schools, abandon the law courts, reject foreign cloth, and spin your own khadi. Thousands of students, lawyers, and workers just walked away from their British-run institutions. They mobilized everyday people to completely paralyze the colonial administrative system right from the bottom up.
But then, right when victory kind of seemed possible, the massive wave crashed. In February 1922, over in a village called Chauri Chaura, a peaceful rally turned chaotic after police fired on the crowd. An angry mob retaliated by trapping and burning 22 policemen alive inside a police station. Gandhi, who was absolutely uncompromising on his principle of nonviolence, literally called off the entire nationwide non-cooperation movement right then and there.
Section 5. Swarajists and Revolutionary Voices.
Obviously, the abrupt halt of a movement left the whole nation completely stunned, leading to some intense frustration and political splintering. This big ideological rift emerged. On one hand, you had the pro-changers, like Motilal Nehru and C.R. Das, who formed the Swaraj Party to enter the British legislative councils and just disrupt the government from within. On the other side were the no-changers, led by figures like Vallabhbhai Patel and C. Rajagopalachari. They believed in staying out of government entirely to focus purely on constructive social work in the villages. So they split their tactics, but importantly, they never lost sight of the ultimate goal of independence.
Meanwhile, the youth in the left wing, they were done waiting. Frustrated by the pause in mass protests, figures like Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, and Rajguru turned to radical, armed revolutionary struggle. At the exact same time, younger politicians like Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose began spreading socialist ideologies. They started organizing trade unions and peasant movements to fight not just British colonialism, but domestic economic exploitation too.
And that sets the stage for Section 6, the Dandi Salt March.
So all these separate streams of frustration and organization were building up serious pressure, right? Setting up the greatest wave of national resistance yet. The real spark was the Simon Commission in 1927. The British sent over this committee to decide India's constitutional future, but get this, it didn't include a single Indian member. No way. The sheer insult of an all-white commission dictating the fate of millions reignited a unified push, and it was met with black flags and universal boycotts everywhere it went.
Gandhi knew he needed a new strategy to focus all this massive explosive energy. And he found genius in literally the most ordinary item imaginable. He recognized that a deeply unfair tax on salt, which is, a basic human necessity required by everyone regardless of religion, caste, or class, could be the perfect, unifying catalyst for a brand new civil disobedience movement.
And the march itself was just a staggering physical undertaking. Gandhi leaves his ashram with just 78 followers. They walk 375 kilometers over 25 straight days to the coast. As they marched, thousands upon thousands joined them. The global press was totally captivated. When Gandhi finally arrived at Dandi on April 6, 1930, and illegally boiled seawater to make salt, it was this massive symbolic blow that resonated all around the world. By picking up a mere handful of salt, Gandhi literally shook the foundations of the mighty British Empire. It wasn't really about the salt itself, right? It was about ordinary people realizing they had the power to refuse unjust laws. So how does a simple symbol become a massive weapon for mobilization? Think about that enduring, transformative power of nonviolent resistance and how it can unite millions. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.